Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the 2023 Black History Then, Black History Now program, sponsored by Columbia Baptist Fellowship right here at the Oakland Mills Interfaith Center, and we are just thrilled that all of you are here to join us on tonight. If you don't mind, we'll do like we always do at Columbia Baptist Fellowship. Come on, the kid, come on up. We'll do like we always do at Columbia Baptist Fellowship. This is my wife, Nakia James. And what we do here is we stand up, we turn to one person, we greet each other. So we want you to stand up, turn to one person, two people, three people, ask them their name and shake their hand and greet them.
I think I know you.
Ms. Delma.
Thank you.
About art and stuff like that. You may be seated. You may be seated. Amen. You may be seated. You may be seated. Amen. Amen. Well, I just want to tell you a little bit of how we got here tonight. I was sitting at home one day and I had this vision. And while I was having this vision, I prayed about it. And then the Lord told me to call one person who I always call whenever there's a major decision to make in this church. Her name is Reverend Sandra Gray. I always call her. So I called her first and I talked with her for 31 seconds. I told her what I wanted to do. Literally 31 seconds. And she told me, you need to call Miss Thelma. So I called Miss Thelma, and Miss Thelma said, I'm having company now, so I'll get back to you. And when she got back to me, she said, absolutely, I will take it from here. And that is how we got here tonight. So I want Ms. Thelma to come and to share a few remarks.
That's my wild child. Good afternoon, everyone. I want to make sure that you look at the displays that represent Black History Now and Black History Then. These people have done a wonderful job of displaying our Black history. And one important thing, we ran out of food, but more food is coming. So we want to make sure that you can get up and still serve yourselves. Welcome again. We're so happy to have you. We're very happy and lucky to have such a beautiful panelist. They represent Black History Now, Black History Then. Thank you.
Isaac, we need your help. At this time, we'll ask that you all would stand as we sing and listen to the Negro National Anthem.
Harmonies of wind. the road we trod, bitter the chastening blood, felt in the days when hope unborn had died, yet with a steady beat and a weary feet, come to the place for which our parents sighed. We have come over a way that with tears has been watered. We have come treading a path through the blood of the stallion. Now from the gloomy past till now we stand at last, where the white gleam of our bright star is fast. God of our weary years, God of our silent tears, thou who hast brought us the star on the way, thou who hast by thy mind led us into the light, keep us forever in the path we pray. Lest our feet stray from the places of God where we met thee, lest our hearts drunk with the wine of the world we forget thee. Shadow beneath thy hand, may we forever stand, true to our God, true to our native land.
Amen. You may be seated. Tonight, we have many dignitaries here, many special people who are here in this room who have made a significant contribution to our history, who are making a contribution now. And I just want to highlight a few of those people. Our county executive is on its way. Our panel is here, and I don't want to take the moderator's job, but Dr. Willis is here. She is the first African-American president of Howard County Community College. We did not invite her, but she showed up, and we thank God for her being here today. And there are many others who are here. We just thank God for all of you who are here on tonight. As we transition our program now, one of the things that I want to say is that every program that we have here at Columbia Baptist Fellowship, it costs a lot of money to have programs. And we want to ask that if you would be so kind to be generous tonight to give a gift, $5, $10, to help us underwrite the cost of tonight's program. There are 2 boxes right in the back. They're draped in purple, and you can walk around and give an offering. Just drop it in those boxes. Just be as generous as you would like to be. But also, if you want to give online, you can do so online by texting CBF Give to 73256. Text CBF Give to 73256. You don't have to do it now. You can do it whenever you get up and walk out, or whenever you choose to do so. Amen. More food is now here. So as we continue to transition, if you're hungry, you can feel free to get up and grab a bite to eat. But at this particular moment, I want to turn this service over, our program over, to our distinguished moderator, Dr. Vernon C. Gray. C. Vernon Gray. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, everybody. Good evening. You know, Reverend James is modest. I come from the Baptist church. And when they say give money, they say we only want quiet money. You forgot that part, you know. But in the Methodist church, I know, I grew up in the Methodist church and you heard the chain jingling, you know. But anyway, it's good to be here with you this evening and with my colleagues and my fellow panelists. I want to give some ground rules here so we'll see where we are and you'll know how to proceed. We do have some cards, 3x5 or 5x8, in which you write your question, and I will ask the question as you give them to. So there'll be some people collecting it. We have the panelists. I will introduce them shortly, but each panelist will have 5 minutes to introduce themselves or tell their story. I will introduce them, but there are a lot of things that they have which I do not have here, and they can embellish it if they would like to. I will ask the first questions after they make their presentation. We will have, and they will make their presentation seated, and they will have 3 minutes to respond to the question, and we will have audience questions, and the same would apply. They will have 3 minutes to answer the question from the audience. So I think, and then at the end we'll have 2 minutes to sum up by the panelists, and then we will have closing by Reverend James. Someone once said, if a tree falls in a forest and there's no one there, was there ever a sound? If a chord is played and no one hears, did the music really play? If a people have no history, did they really exist? History is a yardstick by which we measure our progress. History tells us where we've been. It helps us to understand our present situation, and it serves as a guide to the future. A people without a history is a lost people. A people who do not know their history is a lost people. So tonight we're here to hear some stories from real living history people or people of history. And so I will begin brief statement. Many of you know me from having run for the Howard County Council in 1982, when the county was 12% black, 88% white. I ran countywide. You get naysayers, but you keep on going. I always say you look toward the North Star, which I did. I was elected by district beginning in '86, and I was elected 4 other times. So I served 20 years on the Howard County Council. No one will ever serve 20 years again, because there are term limits of 3 terms, unless they change that. So I did a number of things, but that's not the full story. I grew up on a farm where my grandfather was a sharecropper, and he purchased a few acres from the people in which he sharecropped. I grew up in the house that he built with his hands from wood on that farm with some of the men at the church. My father worked for the State Road Commission. He was first black they allowed to drive one of those machines that cleared the snow and things like that. My father and mother only went to 6th grade because we didn't have high school for black folks in Calvert County. I went to a school called Mount Hope Colored School, and that was the name, in that a 3-room school with a pot-belly stove in the middle of the stove for wood, for heat, and we had to fetch the wood, the kids did. That school was built by Booker T. Washington, 1924, along with the Jewish anthropist Rosenwald, Jewish Rosenwald. He built 156 schools in Maryland, 5 was in my county. He built 5,000 throughout the country. Went on to a black high school, which was built in 1939, named after Brooks, W. Sampson Brooks, who had traveled the world, grew up in Calvert County. I went on to college, and difficult getting to college from Calvert County. I had to hitch a ride for 4 years to Morgan State University from Calvert County. My parents that's why I don't talk about it this much, you know. They got a ride for me when I came home and went back, most often with the preacher who lived in Baltimore, was a preacher at the church. We had 3 miles to catch the bus to high school. I didn't tell you that. I didn't miss a day of high school, even though we had to get up at 6 o'clock to catch a ride with my father when he went to work. Stayed at my grandmother. The bus didn't come until 8. Rode 30 miles to school every day, 60 back and forth. Then walked another 3 miles back home. Never missed a day of high school. So I believed in education. My mother did too. But the first time I ever voted, I voted with a poll tax. First time I ever voted, I voted with poll tax. We were living in Arkansas. I sold poll tax. I worked with a man who asked me to help him, a black gentleman who was very active in politics in Arkansas and Little Rock. He said, would you help me to sell poll tax? I sold poll tax for $1. I turned the receipts into him, the money into him, gave the other receipt to the person. You had to keep that receipt for the next election. If it was a year from now, you kept that receipt. Now, how many of you have receipts from last year? How many of you could keep receipts for a whole year? That's what the poll tax is all about, voter suppression, which is what it was intended to do. But that was my first vote I cast when I was eligible as a poll tax. Didn't tell you, many of you heard of Little Rock Central High School in 1957. I happened to meet Farbus. I was at the State House, met him coming down the steps. Arvo Farbus was his name. We stopped and we chatted a little while. Many of you heard about Little Rock Central with the 9 students getting there, but you never heard about the first time black teachers went to teach for white students. My wife was one of those teachers to be invited to teach in a white school. So, come a long way, but I'm living history, we all live in history. When people said, no, we don't want to talk about the 1800s, no. I'd use the poll tax, but in the 1800s. So I know what it was all about. But I'm proud to be staying here, to know that with certain values, with resiliency, with faith, faith in yourself, faith in God, and faith that people have in you, and the support of a lot of people, you can make it. You can make it. As Martin Luther King said, we will get what we work for, but we don't get all for which we work. So when people say to me, you work hard, you'll make it. I always tell them, put your faith in God, work or you'll make it. No, it's a little more than that. You got to work hard, hard, hard. If 100%, you have to do 110%. You have to do 110%. Last thing I'm going to say, and I'll say some other things. I always say this to my students at Morgan. I taught at Morgan for 40 years. And I was president of the National Association of Counties as well, and the Maryland Association of Counties. I was administrative officer of human rights here in the county, and did a number of other things. But I try to explain sometimes affirmative action to people. You don't hear that anymore. That term became, extinct. They use diversity now. I tell my students, I say, think about, you got a 100-yard race, and you have a person with ball and chain start out at the race. Someone without a ball and chain, they start out as well. And so the gun goes off to go down the track, but 30 yards to stop the race. Take your ball and chain off. You don't have any to begin with. We'll start the race over. Boom. Gun goes off. Who do you think will win the race? The person with the ball and chain is not at the 30-yard line. He's but at the 15-yard line. Who do you think will win the race? Well, if you're African American, you have to run twice as fast. If the other person got a 15-yard advantage on you. So affirmative action is, so let's level this playing field. You can call it equity. Let's level this playing field. You're at the 15, you're at the ball and chain, let's move you up to the 30, where the other person's already, and we start the race again. But you still may have to run 110 yards to make the 100. But we've done that before. We've done that. And we have to keep on keeping on because we have no alternative. And we have to make it with ourselves, with our allies. I believe in allies because I got elected to the council with coalition. You know, the coalition got me there. Running county-wide, you need a coalition. So I am pleased to be standing here with you this evening as a 20-year member of the Howard County Council. Did a lot of my day that was there. And I always saw my role on the council as change the status quo. I was not put there to go along with the status quo. And many times when you change the status quo, it's controversial. I wasn't afraid of controversy, as many of you know. That's how change comes. As I always tell people, if you want to make an omelet, you got to break the egg. So remember that when you ever at a place and you're the only African American, you were there to make a difference, to make a change. And we were the first. I think all of us here are first. We were in office here. Jackie, Sheriff, Calvin, myself. As the Vice President said, it's okay to be the first, you just don't want to be the last. Others have to come behind us. So just as those, I stood on the shoulders of others, there are those stand on my shoulder, and we have to keep going like that. Because many ran before I did, but they were unable to get to the council. Lewis Kelly in 1952, Reverend John Howland ran a couple of times for the council. Leola Dorsey ran for Orphans Court as well as Register of Wills. Those are those who ran before. So here I am, standing on their shoulders, and I was able to get to County Council in 1982. So that's enough for me. I will answer some questions when we get to that point. So let me introduce, I accept applause. Yeah, thank you. Let me introduce my distinguished panel here. Mr. County Executive. He has broad shoulders because others are going to stand on his shoulders. The first is, I'll be quick with this, Jackie Scott. She's called Howard County her home for 25 years. She and her husband have raised 3 children here in the county, all of whom have attended Howard County schools. Jack has dedicated her professional career to positions that embody the values and principles of the Democratic Party. Now, I'll probably read fast because I want to get through these. With a constant eye towards empowering individuals in underserved communities who have traditionally been left behind, she has focused on improving access to health and human service system for those who need it most. Jack spent 10 years as a senior fellow and adjunct professor at the Georgetown Law, where she focused on legal and policy areas of public law, children, family law, housing, race and gender equity. She has held teaching appointments at the School of Public Health, University of Maryland, College Park, the Harrison Institute of Public Law at Georgetown University Law Center, the Nyack College, former Washington, D.C. campus. Today, Jackie serves as the director of the Howard County Department of Community Resources and Services. I think she's the first African-American, first woman. Is that correct? Her passion for serving is not only seen in her professional pursuits, also evident in her personal commitment to community. Whether volunteering for one event or being part of something larger, Jackie is willing to step up. She serves and has served on several local boards and in numerous local organizations. And she will add to what I have here. Dr. Ball, the first time he won 2018, won by 18,000 votes. For the county executive. Well, the second time he ran for county executive, he won by 23,000 votes. Something like 60 to 40. He's a native of Maryland, resident of Columbia. He and his wife, Shawnee, are proud parents of 2 daughters who attend and graduate Howard County Public Schools. He made history in 2006 when he elected youngest council chairperson of the Howard County Council. He made history again when he became the first African American to be elected to the Howard County Council in 2018. Re-elected in 2022, Dr. Ball remained dedicated to ensuring our communities are safe, strong, and accessible to all. He's done a fantastic job, and I could go right down the list of all the great things he's done. Howard County continues to be a regional national leader as county executive continues to champion education, environmental conservation, the health and well-being of our residents, investment in public safety, and fiscal responsibility. and he is now president of the Maryland Association of Counties. He also founded in 2012 the Diversity Caucus of the Maryland Association of Counties. He's also president of the Baltimore Metropolitan Council. He has a bachelor's degree from philosophy and religion from Towson State, master's of arts in legal ethical studies from the University of Baltimore, where he was nominated for the Spirit of Excellence Award, Doctor of Education from Morgan State University. He's a proud member of AFIA. Sorry about that. And a dedicated life member of NAACP. Well, you know how to do it. QSI and Phi Nu Pi, I love all you, you know. Oop and QE and all that stuff, I love you. 50 years ago this June, Ronald and Yancey took an important step, well, several, in Georgia Tech's history as he donned his regalia and walked across the stage as the only black man among 300 graduates and the first African-American student to receive a degree from the Institute. His proud achievement did not come easily but was earned through years of perseverance, trials, tribulation, and loneliness. He was born in Atlanta, grew up next door to Puerto Rico Whitehead, worked for the Georgia Tech Athletic Association under coaches Alexander and Dodd. Years passed, and Yancey proved to be an excellent student, consistently earning high grades. He did well on the SATs, applied to Georgia Tech. He was rejected, so he went to Morehouse. Instead, majoring in math and physics. Morehouse did not have an engineering program, so in the spring of '61, he again applied to Georgia Tech, along with 15 other black men. Again, he was rejected. His mother, strongly supportive of her son's goals, requested an appointment with the registrar. Now, I like that, forthright, which was granted. They were told that Ron did not fit the Tech model of success. Another letter, another request, and another meeting followed with the same answer. He returned to Morehouse. But he was aware that Tech had accepted 3 other black applicants. After completing the second year at Morehouse in the spring of '62, he applied again. He was conditionally accepted if he would retake the SAT and pass the summer chemistry class, all of which he did. Of the first 3 black students, only one was still at Tech when he arrived. And he'll tell the rest of the story. That's part of his story. We have to persevere, as you see. Because you get rejected, you know, I always tell people every defeat is not a loss. You learn more from your defeats than you do from your wins. Samuel Doug Amani, a human rights, civil rights activist. Since 1955, he has been associated with many key figures of the movement for equal rights. He did work for CORE, Congress of Racial Equality, SNCC, Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, Pan-African Skills Project, and Patrice Lumumba Coalition. He did organizing work in 10 states and the District of Columbia. He was born in Kinston, North Carolina. He attended local schools there, and grew into maturity in Brooklyn. He and his family came to Columbia 45 years ago, where he made many contributions here in this community. Served on the Howard County Board of Education Curriculum Review Committee, the Columbia Associated Health and Fitness Advisory, helped administer the growth of Soccer Association in Columbia. He participated in forming many other organizations. He worked for the City of New York, was a project manager of 501c3 and college professor before coming to Maryland. Here he taught information storage and retrieval systems at NIH. He inaugurated the first automated circulation system at the Library of Congress. He served as consultant to UMBC. Mr. Dove retired from Allied Signal, now Honeywell International as manager of information system. He's a graduate of Fordham, Pratt Institute, and did study at Rutgers in New Jersey. Our sheriff. The sheriff doesn't know this, but when I was on the council, we took arrest powers away from the sheriff. So if they see someone they have to arrest, they have to stop, call the police, they come and make the arrest. Isn't that right, Sheriff?
You got him back.
Got him back. Got him, okay. Didn't know you got him back. Marcus Harris graduated Harvard DeGrace High School in '86, attended Hartford Community College, as well as University of Maryland. To 1990, obtained a degree in business administration. He was accepted in Baltimore County Police Department in '93. He was quickly promoted to police detective. He served as citizenry with distinction during his 10-year law enforcement career. Served proudly in the community drug, violence interdiction team, vice and narcotics section in the Warrant Apprehension Task Force. He's successfully been an entrepreneur, a small business owner. He's operated several businesses in Baltimore and Howard County. He's participated in youth activities in Howard County for the past 10 years. He's coached and mentored youth young men and boys in football and basketball and coach. He was elected sheriff in 2018. He's a member of good standing with the Maryland, well, we don't want you to be in bad standing, Maryland Sheriff's Office. You know, we know you'd be. He's in the National Sheriff's Association and the member of the National Organization of Black Law Enforcement, called Noble, I think. I had some association with Noble myself. He didn't tell you he's a Turk, played football there. You see. So those are our panelists. And so we will call on each as in the order which I introduced them. You may applaud. So we'll have them to tell their story, 5 minutes from where they are, beginning with Jackie.
Is it on? No? It's on. Got it. Okay. Good evening, everyone. I'm Jackie Scott, as you've heard. I just want to say thank you for inviting me to be here with you this evening. And when I think about my story, I want to just tell you a snippet of it that has really probably been the impetus for a lot of the things that I've done in my career. So I grew up in New Jersey and went to a inner city high school in Trenton, where there were 600 people in my class, and I was number 2 in my class.
Wow.
Thank you. I was, you know, my mother was an educator, she's a teacher, taught in some of the toughest public school systems in Newark and East Orange and Teaneck in northern Jersey. And my stepfather worked for the state of New Jersey as an engineer. My mother was educated at Trenton State Teachers College, and my father was a Howard graduate from the School of Engineering. So we were, you know, we weren't rich by far. We were, you know, working middle class every day in the city of Trenton. And, but I grew up in the church. For the young people here, you know, I had a praying mama and a praying grandmother and praying aunts. And as a teen, as a young person, I didn't know what that really meant. You know, I didn't really have an appreciation for it. But as we tell our stories, I'll be clear to tell you, I know through my life it's what kept me. But in my junior year of high school, came time to begin to apply for colleges, getting ready, take the SATs and all those things. And I didn't really test well. I struggled with testing, but I had straight A's, really involved in school, all those things. Come early senior year, my guidance counselor simply looked at me and said, "These are the schools you need to apply to." So I brought them home, and my mother, who's an educator, said, "Oh no, where do you want to go?" And so I had an array of schools, and I really wanted to go to Georgetown. Did my application, and took it. Those days it was in paper, right? You took it to your guidance counselor. They put everything together, and you know it's this paper application. And she told me no. She said 2 things. She said they don't take kids from schools like ours, and they probably don't take young people like you. Now, this is the guidance counselor. Now, she didn't look like me. Let's be clear. Majority Black and Latin folks in the school, inner city Trenton School. She didn't look like me. And she told me, that I couldn't dream. She told me no. Well, thank goodness my mother and my grandmother and the rest of my family weren't having it. That could have broken me, but it didn't. Not because of who surrounded me at that moment in that school, but who surrounded me in my community. Because I was involved in my church. I was a debutante. I was a homecoming queen. I was checking the boxes, right? I was doing it. I was determined to get out and make my family proud. Well, I got in. And I have 3 degrees from Georgetown now because I was determined to make her wrong and to prove to myself that I could do it. Now, also some of you appreciate this. I didn't graduate summa cum laude. I graduated, thank you, Laude, with a nice GPA, but it wasn't summa cum laude, right? But I went to the law center and got my law degree, and I went to the business school and got my business degree. 3 degrees from the place that I was told didn't want me and that I couldn't do it. And so when you look at my history and what I've tried to do and my accomplishments, I'm really clear that I didn't get there by myself because there was somebody on the other side at Georgetown who believed enough in me. There were people who surrounded me there, and there was family and community that lifted me up. And so those lessons helped me be where I am today in this position. Why? Because many years fast forward, I lived in Howard County, I worked in DC, I was teaching at Georgetown, doing all kinds of things, and then I decided I wanted to there were things going on, I wanted to be here. I wanted to work here, so I applied for the job here, at that point as the deputy director in what was then Citizen Services. And I got the job. Some things changed in the political atmosphere. And I was there probably about 6 or 8 months, and then things shifted dramatically. And in 4 years, there were 4 different directors. I was the deputy, and each time there was another director brought in on top. There was another, and in between, I was acting, holding it down, and there was another, right? And then there was another. And I guess the 4th time was the charm. They had no, I guess I'd been standing, right? I'd been holding it down. Because again, every time you tell me no, I can't, I'm going to prove you wrong. And that's that tenacity. And so as I sum this up, what I want to say, and I'm happy to answer any questions, is, and for the young people who are watching and listening, the 3 things that have gotten me through is being prepared, because my education, every degree, everything I studied, I knew nobody could take my education away from me. Whatever I went after, I was going to be prepared to do it. I was going to be patient. And patience is tough sometimes, but you got to be patient, and you got to be persistent. You got to believe in yourself and be persistent. And those are the things that have marked my journey and my life. And they've been undergirded by 2 things each time I've been in a spirit of preparation, patience, and persistence. I've had to be courageous, and I've had to lean on my faith, leaning back to those praying mamas and grandmamas and aunties and cousins and pastors who prayed with and over me. And those are the things in my story that I want to leave with you and talk to you about tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll just talk loud. Our next speaker then is Dr. Calvin Ball, County Executive.
Good evening, and thank you so much for being here this evening. I am so excited on this last day of Black History Month on a Tuesday evening. It's Tuesday, right? Okay. You know, when you work every day, you miss some days every once in a while. But to be in a packed room with such an esteemed panel and of course, the revered Dr. Gray. Many of you know a lot about my story, but many of you don't know about some of the backstory. And I'll talk more throughout, but I just want to give you all, especially some of our young people or some of our young at heart people who are trying to mentor some of our young people. I want to talk a little bit briefly about my parents. A lot of people don't know much about my parents. I'm a lifelong Marylander. My mother, I remember when I was a boy, she started school and she went to the community college. And she took classes for maybe 2 semesters, had straight A's. And then because of some of her mental health challenges, she was unable to continue. My father, who was a Vietnam-era veteran, through the GI Bill, went to Morgan State University. It took him 8 years as a part-time student to get his bachelor's degree. They both poured all that they had into me being successful. My first semester in college, because my parents were unfamiliar with the process of going to college, I learned on my own. We didn't have a lot of money. I actually put my first semester on a credit card that I had just gotten. Didn't have enough money for the books, though, after that. And then had a lot of challenges those first couple semesters. I then went on to graduate still in 4 years. I was 20 years old when I graduated. Earned my master's degree at a 3.5. Earned my doctorate where I was inducted into the Honor Society. Run for county council on, as Dr. Gray alluded to previously, the shoulders of giants such as Dr. Gray. And then become county executive at a time when very few people thought it was even possible. And so I want to just tell our young people, sometimes you may feel that you don't have the social capital or even the financial capital to do what you want to do. You may feel like your dreams are too big, and they should be. To those of you who love our young people might be saying, what is wrong with that boy? Or what is that girl thinking? There were a lot of people might have said that about me in the early days, and there's hope. We must, as Jackie and Dr. Gray said, persevere. We oftentimes start at certain disadvantages, and we have the opportunity to break those barriers. And now when I go to different schools and talk to folks, oftentimes they see the Honorable Dr. Calvin Ball. But I wasn't always that. And that means that wherever you are, where you want to be, you can go. What has been done can be done. And I'm so excited to have this program this evening, not just to talk a little bit about our stories, but hopefully ignite a flame of hope, of optimism, so that all of you, when you're told that you have certain barriers, you can overcome them. Thank you so much.
At this time, we'll have Ronald Yancey.
Good afternoon. I want to thank the panel first for the invitation. I'm happy to be here and among this august group. I see I'm surrounded by giants. I came from a very humble background, and I need to tell you that I have been blessed. I went through many, many difficulties, many, many challenges, most of the time by myself, except my family. I had my family around me. But I grew up in Atlanta, in the roughest neighborhood of Atlanta, called Fifth Ward. If anybody knows Atlanta, you know where the Fifth Ward is. It's over near Northside Drive, near the campus of Georgia Tech. I had, my father was a postman. I had 7 brothers and 2 sisters. And in that neighborhood, he actually had another shoe shop. He owned a shoe shop that he had bought from a Russian Jew. He used to work for this Russian Jewish gentleman. And oh, by the way, I want to say up front before we even get started that there was a strong coalition in Atlanta between the Jewish community and the African American community. They helped us a lot. We helped them. And it turned out that many times we had common interests, but we had no animosity between us. We had no anti-Semitism between us. They helped us start businesses. They helped us create industry in Atlanta. There were a number of people that, if you know, the Atlanta has a real economic story. My father worked 2 jobs. He worked the post office. We all grew up working. And when it was during the 1960s, in high school, I was at Booker T. Washington High School, and we had the demonstrations downtown started, downtown Atlanta, sit-ins, the picketing, the physical demonstrations. We had to find the jobs for people. People needed jobs. They weren't being hired. They were on labor. So labor-intensive jobs. So we decided enough of this. And at the Atlanta University Center, that was one advantage we had. Our educational system of 5 colleges there, the 5 university colleges, and we had excellent teachers. Our teachers decided that you were going to be prepared. And they went to summer school almost every summer, and most of our teachers, public school teachers included, had a master's degree. So they put a big emphasis on education. And we learned, and the biggest sin you could commit was to have integration arrive and you not be ready. We always said that. That was one joke we used to make. We tell people, you're not ready yet. You're not ready. You're not. But the emphasis on education paid off. And in my high school, Booker T. Washington High School, you had to work hard. Turner High was another school. You had to work hard at those schools. And I happened to be, won the citywide science fair in the 11th grade. And in the 12th grade, I was president of the student government. And there were 10 members of my class who were members of the National Honor Society. So we put a big emphasis on that. At the conclusion of my high school, I finished in 1960. I applied to Georgia Tech. And I sent all the paperwork in, and I had a conditional acceptance at MIT, at UCLA, at Syracuse, and a few other schools. Georgia Tech had looked at my paperwork, and they informed me that I didn't have all the paperwork I needed. So they said, send in your transcript, your high school transcript. When I sent my transcript in from Booker T. Washington High School, I never heard another word from Georgia Tech. I made several phone calls and nothing happened. I went to Morehouse on a scholarship. I finished my first year at Morehouse. I applied again, and in the same time, the three gentlemen who were accepted, this was 1960 acceptance, after my first year, the second year, well, 16 of us applied for Georgia Tech, and they accepted 3. So the rest of us wrote a letter to Georgia Tech asking, we told them we wanted to know exactly why we were turned down. We wanted details, and we wanted to meet with the administration and find out what happened. So my mom and I went over and we met one of the signatories of the letter, and they told me that I probably would not be successful according to their computer program. Even though my SAT scores were almost twice what Georgia Tech's average scores were of the students they were accepting. So I went in, and he said, well, what about, would you accept, we don't know how to transfer information from Georgia Tech to classes from Morehouse to Georgia Tech. We have no experience. So they said, would you accept a freshman entry? I told them, no, I won't accept a freshman entry. That's a bad precedent for Morehouse. And for the second reason, Morehouse and Georgia Tech are both accredited by the Southern Association of Southern Schools. We both have the same accreditation and have had for over 100 years. So I said, no way. And they said, okay, we'll consider it again. So on the third time I was accepted at Georgia Tech, and I was given a tour of the campus, and then the hard stuff started. But so most of the times I ended up in a classroom that was empty ring of seats around my class. I was a lab group of 1. So for 3 long years I was isolated. Nobody spoke to me, nobody sat next to me, nobody talked to me, and there was hostility, open hostility around. There were death threats on the phone. You had open phone books, so everybody could call you anytime they wanted. You could just pick up the phone book and call somebody. So that was my Georgia Tech side, and I went through those 3 years of that. I'll tell you another story toward the end of that. But in the meantime, back at Morehouse, I had to go to, before I went to Georgia Tech, I had to go to the court and get a statement that said I had never been arrested, because we were being arrested at Morehouse in the demonstrations, and there was plenty of violence around. Thank goodness for my background growing up in the neighborhood. I knew when a crowd would get dangerous. I could tell when somebody would get dangerous, so I had to use that on the campus to make sure I was careful where I was. We had to tell the school when we were coming to class, what point of entry that we were coming in. We were advised not to go to athletic events, and there would be Georgia Bureau of Investigation agents attending classes with us, unbeknownst to us. We would not know who was there and who was on our side and who was, but we should be protected, and they did make clear to the students that anybody causing a problem would be sent home quickly. And would you believe the first day that the first 3 went, one guy got tripped walking down the class, and he came up swinging. Now, I had a background at the demonstrations to know that we had to sign a pledge that we would not engage in violence. We had to eschew physical violence. We were to be nonviolent, and we had to take an oath before we went out to do that. So many times I was out there walking, not knowing what's behind me. I couldn't turn around, and we had to keep moving. There were a number of incidents in a number of places that I won't go through. But so when I finished Georgia Tech. I came into another environment very similar. Engineering is a very conservative environment. So I'll just tell one other thing that happened at the Georgia Tech. I was told 6 weeks before graduation that I was not, by the head of the department, the electrical engineering department, that I was not going to make it. You have to have a B average in your major electives in your senior year to graduate. Well, long story short, I went through a lot of exams. I had about 16 exams at the end of the year. In the last 2 weeks, when we're not supposed to have any exams, I was told that, well, when I finished, I had the professor who had to give me a final exam said, I'm not going to try to stop you. He said, you have passed, you're more than passed with courses that we have. He said, we're going to, and it turned out that at the end, my Georgia Tech resume said that I was in the upper third of the class. So my biggest surprise afterwards are the number of awards that have come to Georgia Tech. And I've been trying to, emphasize that you should donate back to your school, give back to your school. Don't be angry, don't be bitter. Georgia Tech has graduated over 32,000 African American graduates since I left. And other than the only George Washington University says that the average engineer earns in his lifetime $2.5 million more than he would without a degree. Georgia Tech is the leading graduate of black engineers now, and black PhD engineers, and $2.5 million to 32,000 people is almost $30 billion in the African American community. So I'll stop there.
Our next speaker will be Amani Dove.
Good evening. Can you hear me? Can you hear me now? Good. My presentation will be a little bit different. I'm billed as a civil rights icon, human rights activist. At 9 years old, I watched my two brothers participate in a walkout at a school in Kinston, North Carolina. A walkout that was led by 5 seniors who went to the school superintendent's office, made a presentation for classroom space and a new gymnasium. They were told maybe in 10 years we could consider that. Those seniors went off to college, and in a couple of years they came back. They saw a building rising. It was additional classrooms and a spanking brand new gym. The biggest gym in the eastern part of North Carolina, which subsequently the Globetrotters played on. Well, as a 9-year-old, I learned something. You make a demand, you may get something. If you don't, you won't. And I've carried that forward. And by the way, the gentleman who led that walkout is right here. Stand, John. That's John Dudley. Had that case been litigated, it could have been part of Brown versus Board. It was not. They all started, those 6 cases started all in 1951. Ours obviously did not need that attention. We got what we asked for, or demanded, if you will. As I said, that governed what I was to do later. And it came on the same week in 1955 that Emmett Till was killed. I refused to give up my seat in August of 1955 on a bus. And by the way, I'm just giving you bullets because I believe the moderators when he said that we only had 5 minutes. I can't cough for 5 minutes. So I gave up the seat. I did not give up the seat, but there's more to that story. So if you have questions later about these nuggets, you can ask and I can expand on each one of them. Oh. Well, my next activity was a sit-in at 17 at a drugstore in the same city, Kinston, North Carolina. And I'll just say this, I used a ruse to get it done, to accomplish that deed. Now, since I have more time, I guess I can tell you exactly what happened. There were a couple of friends, one of whom they were brothers. But the older brother had just graduated the year before, graduated high school. And I put something to both of them, and they said, "Oh, I think I like that." The idea was we were going to integrate the counter. This is about 5 or 6 days after the Greensboro sit-in, 1960. But how are we going to do it? Well, I was very good in French in high school, so I concocted this scheme. Curtis Henderson and his brother Thomas. Thomas was going to be the lookout. Curtis was going to be an ambassador from Washington, from the country of Ghana. I would speak French to him, and he would speak in the Tarzan language to me. This is a true story. So we proceeded. He was dressed appropriately in February wearing sandals, and he took a seat at the counter. I stood. The waitress comes to me, "Can I help you?" She's white. I said, "Yes, the Ambassador Curti would love to have coffee, eggs, and toast." She looked at me strangely, and I said, "Well, it's just him. I'm not being served." So she goes in the back and brings out the manager. I looked at him dead in the eye and said the same exact thing. And he said, "Put the order in." Well, put the order in, and the order is coming out now, but the person who's bringing the order out lives in my building, in the projects. So she nearly dropped the tray and called the waitress and said, "Look, why don't you take this out?" And she did. She brought it out. Well, she brought it out. She didn't give us away, thank goodness. Anyway, Monsieur Curti ate his meal. When he finished, we ran back to East Kinston as fast as we could, okay? Now, what I didn't know at the time, exactly 100 years earlier, a block away, the Confederate soldiers hung 24 Confederate soldiers who they thought were spies. Somebody asked, well, what would have happened if you knew that? Well, we had to do what we had to do. That was the answer. Anyway, that was just one thing. And I'll be brief on some of the others, all right? Just bullets. Okay, all right. So, later, 1960, I meet James Farmer, who was the head of Corps. He gave me an assignment of surveillance. You'll have to ask me questions about that. Later, I met James Foreman. I joined SNCC. Following that, we had demonstrations at the campus that I attended, Fayetteville State University in Fayetteville, North Carolina, where a police chief threatened my life. I had to leave. I did not graduate from Fayetteville State. I graduated from Fordham University. After that, I met Malcolm X, and I'll have to tell you more about that. Then, in 1965, something happened that is generally unknown in this country. We had something called a Black Media Workshop. And you're going to have to ask questions about that because I really want you to know what happened with that. Finally, I'll give you my Martin Luther King meeting.
Thank you. And last person I met a few years ago, I was very impressed with him, and he's done a great job as sheriff. Marcus, you tell us your story and something about you.
First, I want to thank you for including me in this panel this evening. This is what it's all about for me. This is history sitting up here. The gentleman up front, that's history. That's why I love Black History Month. My grandkids aren't going to be overwhelmed with me because I'm not a good storyteller, but it was a common theme up here tonight, and it was about moms. I can honestly tell you, I would not be sitting here this evening as the sheriff of Howard County if it wasn't for my mother. My mom had a high school education. She was a very intelligent woman, but my mom cleaned hotel rooms for a living. I didn't grow up with a silver spoon in my mouth, but she did teach me right from wrong, and she taught me that to every action there was a consequence. And I love my mom more than anything on the face of this earth. And I get choked up when I talk about her. I took care of my mom for 12 years. She passed away in 2008. And I can tell you, when I pray at night, she's included in my prayer, and I speak to my mom till this day. My journey to where I'm at now as the sheriff of Howard County, I can remember I was in the academy, and for the younger generations that's here, I'm a part of the quota system, okay? I was only hired by Baltimore County because I was a part of a quota, okay? They had to hire so many minorities. That's the only reason I had the job, and I had an education. But I was one of 2 out of 27 people in my academy class. I was one of 2 minorities in my academy class. And I can remember going home to my mom after a month being in the academy and saying, "Mom, I don't think I can do it. I just don't think I can do it. I don't get along. I don't have anything in common with the individuals in my class." I did some more research and learned that in Baltimore County, out of 1,800 police officers, there are only 250 minorities. Out of that 250 minorities, there were more Caucasian ladies on the job than there were African-American males. And if you know anything about our job, it's male-dominated. And I just didn't think I could do it. And my mom being who she was, she's like, "Oh no, you're gonna finish." you're going to at least finish the academy before you make a decision. And she was 100% right, because if she didn't do that, I wouldn't be where I'm at today. I got on the job, and I'm the first detective that was promoted while still on probation. Yeah. So they made the mistake and allowed me to take the test, and I finished number 1. And there's nothing they could do because they knew I finished number 1. So they didn't want that smoke. But 10 years on the job, I did 15, by the way. 10 years on the job, in every unit I was in, I was the only minority in my unit. And I worked with some really good guys. I felt like they had my back, but it was different, right? I was the only minority for 10 years in every unit that I went to. Until I went to Baltimore City. I did my last 5 years in Baltimore City. And, I had some things in common with those guys. We liked the same music. We dressed alike, right? Not that I didn't like the guys I worked with, but I'm just keeping it real. It was a little different once I got to the city, and I enjoyed it. Fast forward to today, I am your first African-American sheriff in Howard County history. When you think back on it, it's kind of sad, right? 2018, you're getting your first county executive, African-American county executive, your first African-American sheriff, and your first African-American state's attorney in 2023. What I'll say about it is I do consider myself a role model now. I don't know if I would have said that 10 years ago or 15 years ago, but I do consider myself a role model. And I'm happy to get up to go to work every day and deal with the youth here in Howard County. We were able to bring the Boys and Girls Club to Howard County. We've never had the Boys and Girls Club here in Howard County. We have an MOU with the school system now. Never had an MOU with the school system now. We're in the schools. We're dealing with the youth, okay? I know when I ran for this position, I was told I couldn't win. We proved them wrong because of you. Proved them wrong. Just like the county executive, we doubled the numbers this time, which tells me that we must have done something right. We must have done something right because we doubled the numbers. And I can guarantee you sitting here that you're getting the best out of us. Getting the best out of us. I can guarantee you. We speak often. We have each other's back. If it wasn't for the county executive, I wouldn't be able to move my agency forward. We do have full police powers, by the way. Okay, so we can lock you up. Don't get it twisted. We can lock you up. We have a great partnership with our PD now. And with the leadership of Dr. Ball, we're going to continue to do great things over the next 4 years. If I could say anything to the youth out here, I bring up the quota in Black History Month. You can be anything you want to be. You can be the president. You can be the county executive. You can be the lead. You can be the head of a law enforcement agency. Okay? When I took over the sheriff's office, it was a different office. If you don't know, the sheriff, the reason I ran is I received a phone call, and they asked me to run for this position. Because the sheriff, not the sheriff that was in office when I ran, because the sheriff that was there was appointed by Mr. Hogan, our last governor. But the sheriff before that was accused of racial acts or being a racist. I didn't know him. I won't talk ill of the man. I did not know him. But what I can tell you is when I walked in the office, they did not want me there. But what I can also tell you is most of those guys are gone. So, to the youth, once again, you can do anything and be anything that you want to be moving forward. Please know that and take back Black History Month. Don't just take Black History Month to learn your history. Year round. Year round. Learn it. It's your greatest teacher. Understand what we've been through as a people. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Now we have some questions. We have some cards. If you have a question that you would like to ask, if you raise your hand, we'll have someone bring you the card to ask. I will ask the few that I have here. Each can respond to it. The first question I have, it says, what's the best advice you ever received? Life for her was no crystal stair, had tacks in it, boards and splinters, boards all torn up in places where there'd been no floor, carpet in the floor. But I, moving on, my mother gave me the biggest advice I could get. She said, do all the good you can, don't worry about who get the advice, who get the credit. So that's the way I am. We just got to accomplish something, you don't worry about who gets the credit. That's the biggest piece of advice I ever got. Jackie, each of you, what's the biggest, best piece of advice you ever received?
I was thinking.
Oh, yes. Okay. I was going to say more than that.
Oh, that's okay.
I'll keep it. The best advice I ever received from my mom was, I have to be 2 times better than the person standing next to me, and if I won't succeed. And I think we all know what she was talking about, but I had to be twice as good as the person standing next to me.
The best advice I ever received also was from my mom, and she told me know when to be the lion and when to be the lamb.
Well, I won't say this is the best that I've ever received, but it was certainly useful as an activist. In organizing, I was told, let the people tell you their problem. Don't tell them.
The best advice I ever got was don't quit. You can beat yourself if you quit. Don't accept defeat, no matter how impossible some of your tasks may seem. And as an engineer, that was the one thing that I did. I stayed on jobs that did not look possible, and I was able to work some things that they thought were like miracles. But it's also the faith in God that made that work. You can't do that unless you believe in God.
I was thinking about so many things coming through my head, but one of the best pieces of advice that I got was from my grandfather. He always said, walk softly but carry a big stick. Don't let people underestimate you. It's okay to be quiet, but don't let people underestimate you.
Okay, next question I have here, it's what character value helped you the most? I believe in being positive. Negative people don't need to come around me. Or else you'll find out you'll become positive. Always look on the bright side of things. You know there are going to be other sides, but that's what I try to be positive. And
For me, I think my best quality is treating people the way I want to be treated, basically treating people fairly.
I think to dream big for our young people. My introduction into Howard County was my parents stopping on the side of 29 so that we could look out the window and see the fireworks. As county executive, now I'm the one who pushes the switch to start the fireworks. So dream big, young people.
The character and value I would say is honesty and integrity. Your word matters.
Don't hold grudges. Don't stay angry. Put it behind you very quickly and move on. Wow. Did I do that?
Ain't nobody mad but the
Be a good listener.
Yeah.
You know, when I started out in Howard County way back there, we had a thing called Mr. Amos. How many of you remember Amos with the little shop up on Frederick Road that black people had to go around back to get in? So we had to get rid of that. Another person, he wanted to buy a building to have a business. He had to get all the white neighbors on the street sign so he could purchase that building. So I met with him. I said, wait a minute, that went out in 1948. You know, I was trying to remember the case. I thought it'd come to me just like that. I said, you could not sign a covenant. We call restricted covenants. And another situation we had to get rid of that. That was in Sykesville, the place, whenever a black person went into it, they would close the joint down. They'd just close up. 2 o'clock in the afternoon, they just close. So I had to, you know, send the police out. We send one black, one white police out to deal with that situation. And I could go on, those were not 82 we're talking about. We had to deal with all of those kind of situations, you know. And I'd say that because someone questioned here, what was something you could change? What was something you wish you could change in this era? I'm gonna let the county executive start that one. Mr. County Executive, what is something, you're the man, can turn the switch on. Make it happen.
Well, I was thinking, I was bifurcating my thoughts in something that I think that we can change a little bit more easily and something that I think is a bit more aspirational. I think one of the things that I would like to change is more opportunity. There are so many systems that keep many of our young people, as Dr. Gray was talking earlier, with that ball and chain immediately at the start of the race. So dismantling those systems. And I think something a little bit more aspirational that is still related is a world where no matter what our young people's background is, and it's, of course, there are racial issues, but also related to socioeconomic issues, challenges with mental or physical health, that they are seen for who they really are, and they're seen for who they can be, as opposed to whatever their race, skin color, or what have you, as a barrier. It should be seen as a benefit, as an opportunity. So that's what the things that I wish we could change.
So for me, this is going to sound crazy. This is something I pray for every night, and it's really simple. It's peace on earth. I include that every night that I pray. That's one thing I pray for, and that's peace on earth. Like I said, I don't know that I can push a button and make that happen, but every day that I go out, I'm very positive, and I try to make that change and bring people together and work for peace on earth. I know it may sound crazy, but that's just what I pray for every night.
One of the things that I'd like to change that's about where we are today is relationship. We no longer see people as people. We no longer see the humanity in one another. We've become so clouded and so the lens of how we work together, we engage in each other, just the trauma that people have been through has just changed people. And if there's one thing that I literally could change, it would be to sort of dial back to a time at which we saw the humanity in each other and could relate and help and talk to and laugh and be in relationship with each other in a more humane way.
I like that one too. I've always thought that people should be closer and they should show the love of humanity. There's a human love around that you need to show in ways, in creative ways. There are ways that you can let people know that you care about them. There are ways that you can smile at people as you walk down the street. There are ways to be a friendly person, an open person. And it takes a lot of creativity to say, what can I do to help a certain number of people today? I want to help everybody I can today while I'm still here and while I can make a difference.
I'd like to see more mentors coming out of our community. Mentors are needed. I've been doing it for over 60 years. A lot of my colleagues in SNCC and some other formations have passed on, and I've been mentoring some of their progeny, even in their adulthood. They consult. They want to know what to name their child. They consult. So I'd like to see a lot more of that. There was a time in this country, especially right after the civil rights movement began its ebb, that we were calling one another brother and sister, no matter what color you had. That's not present. The feeling itself is not present. I'd like to see that change come back.
I will respond to that. That one question from county executive to respond to, and there was a question about how we feel about Black history. I think we've sort of answered that question. I have always felt that we are the change we seek. We can get everybody involved, make a difference where you are, in your street, in your neighborhood, wherever you are. You are the change we seek. County executive, the question I had here is, what are we going to do about affordable housing?
So as those of you who have been following the issue closely, affordable housing is a challenge across our nation. I think here in Howard County in particular, a place that is such an enviable place to live, where we're known as home of the safest city, record investments in schools, so many other issues that make the quality of life. A lot of people want to move to Howard County. People not just from the rest of the state, there are advertisements outside of the country today saying if you want the best school system, if you want the best opportunity between Baltimore and DC, come to Howard County. However, I think it is incumbent upon us to create more of those opportunities, and that's one of the reasons why I'm glad we were able to put more money into an affordable housing trust fund. I'm glad that we have worked to create more doorknobs with various projects that I think created more opportunity for quality housing that hit some of the lower area median incomes. But we have a lot of work to do. There are some reports that say we have a dearth of about 30,000 housing units. Conversely, there are many people who are concerned about more development and more housing units. And so I think having the balance of ensuring that we have those facilities that keep our high quality of life while creating more of those opportunities is something that we all need to do. When I put forward a budget that has investment in affordable housing, when I put forward legislation for affordable housing, I need everyone's help in here to continue to advocate before our county council, on our delegation, on these issues. It is a national problem, but it is an all of us issue, which means it's an all of us opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. Now, I'd like to recognize one person, and I will call on the pastor. Ms. Doris Ligon, African Art Museum of Maryland, was here someplace. Doris Ligon. Great museum, should visit sometime. The only one in the state of Maryland. The only one in the state of Maryland should visit at some point. Okay, I'd like to give us the panel a round of applause. Now, Reverend James.
I'll use this mic because it's louder. Well, the hour is late, and I know everybody wants to go home. But I just want to say two things, and I'm not going to take long, because I've been talking about this earlier in our staff meeting, not taking long. Amen. So the first thing that I want to say is that this panel, you guys really stretched my faith. Originally, my idea when I had this panel, I had all of you in mind, and the first thing I said was, they don't have time. They're too busy. And then the Lord told me, just write the letter. So I obeyed God, and I wrote the letter, and then one person said yes. The next person said yes. The next person said yes. And the next person said yes. So I say all of that to say tonight is that whenever you have an idea, the Lord gives you an idea, all you have to do is just be obedient to what God is telling you to do, and the Lord will take care of the rest. And this is evidence of that. I can't take credit for it. They said yes. And I believe that everything that we heard here tonight has inspired all of these people. Look at these kids, babies here, and our young people from our youth program that DCRS invests in. So I thank God for Miss Jackie Scott. And we have so much going on right here in the Oakland Mills Interfaith Center. And we do food distributions here. We serve thousands of families. I mean, I think last year we did close to 13,000 families right here on these grounds. And the people who serve are young, old, black and white, Christian and Jew, no faith at all. I mean, these kids pack bags and put stuff in all of that stuff happens right here in the Oakland Mills Interfaith Center. And I myself, I am the first African-American pastor of this 50-year congregation, Columbia Baptist Fellowship. There is more food left. Oh, it looked like it's all gone. So thank God we ordered it. Thank God we ordered the extra food. But I do want to ask this one last question. Can you help me pay the bill for tonight? So there are two, I'm still a pastor, so help me pay the bill. There are two baskets in the back. Just drop something in it on the way out. Thank you so much for coming. We'll do more stuff like this, but I need some help paying the bills so the people on the admin team won't get mad at me. Thank you. Amen. Have a good night. Thank you. Let's give this panel one more round of applause. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
No, man, I didn't get enough.
My youngest son
Thank you so much.
Can we get one big picture? Miss Thelma, where's Miss Thelma? Miss Thelma. Miss Thelma, will you come to the stage, Miss Thelma? We want to take a picture with you.
Wow, how we want to stand? How do you want us to stand?
Looks great.
Stand, come on up. No, you're right beside my wife. Stand. Stand. Get right between us. Take your mask off. Take your mask off.
More than one.
Yes.
See you over. I don't know. Thank you so much for all you do. I really it's my heart. Oh, man, it's been all in my office. You know my office is? You know where it is. Just put it all in my office.
And it keeps to this day. Kids need to hear it and understand that. That's what that was us. We're going for us.
We gotta do it. I gotta get you on there. I'm not gonna stop asking you until you say yes. How many years have you been
I'm gonna pitch it.
Mr. Dudley, we gotta get y'all on camera. Oh, yes. Documentary. Right now, we gotta get y'all telling the story on camera. I see y'all walk out.
Let me give you my card so you try to get me. Because anytime, call me, touch base, let me know if you see something that you.
You don't have to put it back.
Oh, yes, let's okay.
We can talk some more.
We should.
These
I'm
kisses.
interested to hear the story.
You need to have
We
dinner.
want
You
to
need to have
just
dinner or
have.
something so
We
you
need
can come
to.
over and ask you the question.
I want to say all the stuff that you listed. I really want to hear.
I want to hear the Martin Luther King story.
And the Malcolm X story.
Right, that's right.
I thought I'd get a chance for that.
I
but-
know. So listen, Denise can do the cooking, you do the inviting. We'll come over and you can tell us stories, right?
Yes. Yes. So Adrian, you think Adrian Morrow? Or you think
Good.
All right. She's an AKA. She's on I feel like I knew somebody that knows you. Okay.
All right, but when you're ready, just call me. Okay. We gotta take a picture.
Take it easy.
My brother right here.
Very nice.
Thank you for that. I'm gonna get the recording.
All right. All righty. We'll check. All right.
Mr. Yancey, thank you so much. Thank you. I really appreciate it. This is amazing. They got a statue of you. I think I saw it online.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, just go. If the name is spelled wrong.
Yeah, I got to get my graphic designer to fix that for me. So. Yep, look at that. Look at that. Look at that. That's your granddaughter. Wow. Wow.
Hey man, I didn't want no nuggets. I wanted the full story. You got. I'm gonna have to.
I thought I was going to have a chance to give the full story.
I know, but you gotta learn to talk faster.
No, it's not that.
With all your nuggets, we'd have been here till tomorrow morning.
That's correct. That is correct. That is correct.